The people we talked to for this story all said there were few wrinkles in the relationship between the town and the university, but we wanted to find out for ourselves. So we did. 30 Minutes requested thousands of emails between town and university officials under North Carolina public records law. We hope to get a behind-the-scenes look at the working relationship between the dozens of employees on both sides who interact every day. Turns out they were right. As we combed through the emails, we found cooperation on a number of topics. Cordial notes between President Lambert and the town manager, information sharing among police officers and judicial affairs administrators, and countless other instances where the parties seemed to get along well. As we kept reading, we found one relationship that seemed especially cooperative, one that, at times, has led to a few extra phone calls and some stern guidance for students.
My role with students is to help them understand policies, if they're going to be cited, to help them understand how they can take corrective action to avoid being cited.
Janelyn Patterson works at the university as the Assistant Vice President for Student Life. We found a number of conversations between Patterson and the town's planning director, Sean Tenser.
I try to use her as a voice for me to say, hey, look, there's a problem. Take it one step further and go to Janelyn and say, look, I got some students here, what can we do?
As town planner, Tenser's job is to enforce town ordinances and check for appearance code violations. As assistant vice president, one of Patterson's responsibilities is to work as a liaison between town employees like Tenser and Elon students. A typical email between Tenser and Patterson looks like this one from November 30th, 2009. Whenever a weekend of partying results in yards full of trash or houses covered in tarps, Tenser turns to Patterson to help take care of the problem, asking her to step in on behalf of the university.
We do try to be proactive with those houses to say, look, this is far beyond the standard.
Tenser says Patterson's proactive efforts beat his other option.
As a town official, I can do civil penalties, but I choose not to do that. I generally try to work it out first.
So that's really a last resort for you.
It's a last resort for me, and it's a last resort. I don't like finding people. It's not fun.
But we found several emails from Patterson like this response to Tenser's message on November 30th, encouraging him to continue citing students. And this email from September 9th, 2009 shows Patterson answering a question from Tenser about the university stepping in to have students clean up their off-campus house. Patterson urges Tenser to issue a civil citation so the university can become involved in the matter, saying, I can sure threaten it if they are issued a citation.
I just thought it was interesting reading you, go ahead and cite them, so that we can get involved, kind of a university employee encouraging the citation of students.
Well, I apologize if that's the perception, but it's more that I think there needs to be a standard under which we get involved. It's much more of in a way to say, if this has risen to the level that you need to take some action, then take some action, and then we'll work with you on that. But I'm very hesitant about always being in students' business off campus with regard to those kinds of things.
Patterson and Tenser ride together through the town about twice a year, looking at off-campus houses where students live. We sent a cameraman along with Tenser on a recent ride, sitting in the seat normally reserved for Patterson. A ride last spring prompted Patterson to email Director of Greek Life Shana Plasters. She was worried about the negative perception Greek students living off campus were sending to community members.
You sent an email to Shana Plasters and said that the perception from the town was that Greek students were the major problem.
Right.
Do you think that's the case?
No, not necessarily. Perceptually, I think it's the case because when you looked at those situations, what you saw were coolers that had Greek letters all over them in yards that clearly were violating ordinances. You saw posters in the yard, or they were on the doors, but were now in the yard. So the perception, because that's what's the most visible, is obviously that there's more, there are more violations by its students of Greek. But I don't necessarily think that's necessarily the reality, because there have been other times where we've tried to be proactive with students that are not.
That's not the first time Patterson has sent an email expressing concern about Greek students off campus. Patterson sent this email in February 2009 to then-Director of Greek Life Jay Anhorn, expressing concern over a particular off-campus house where Greek students live, saying that the house is just gross. This time, Patterson focused on just one fraternity, Kappa Alpha Order, known as KA around campus. Richard Donegan is a member of KA. He says his fraternity has received more scrutiny than others.
I feel like, for whatever reason it may be, we've kind of always been in the spotlight as far as with the school trying to set an example of us, whether that be because we've gotten in trouble like to a higher degree than other fraternities have in the past years, which, I mean, is debatable.
When it comes to Greek students being the main source of off-campus parties, noise, and trash, Donegan disagrees.
You'd have to more so be looking for it to notice it. I don't think it bothers the townspeople at all if that's what she's concerned about.
Would you say do you pay more attention to the Greek folks just because they're out there more, maybe they're more apparent?
No, I don't pay. I just pay attention to the problem.
So you think that the town is more generous than the university?
They're more understanding that it's college, whereas the university, on the other hand, will kind of take things to the next level. They won't even contact you necessarily directly and tell you exactly what's going on, but there could be people who are going to get in trouble and do dangerous things and drink too much. I mean, but that's going to happen anywhere. There's like no way you can control that, no matter what you do.
Daryl Gauthier is concerned about the cost of controlling parties that get out of hand. Gauthier lives in Elon and owns Provence Apartments and Avelian townhomes, popular off-campus housing options for students.
I'm going to go out on a limb and suspect that probably more than 40% or 50% of the telephone calls placed to 911 or placed to the police department are probably university related. Maybe drunken students, maybe noise. It could be a slew of things.
A 30 minutes analysis of police reports from the first 4 months of 2011 shows that just 28% of all calls involved an Elon student, and a little more than half of the incidents involving students also involved partying, drugs, or alcohol. Gauthier says the university is putting a burden on the town by creating a need for emergency services but not paying for them. The university does not pay property taxes because it is a nonprofit.
I don't believe 40 or 50% of the budget for the police department or the fire department is supported by the university.
Even though the university doesn't pay property taxes, it makes a contribution to the town's general fund each year. That contribution totals a little less than $19,000. The town manager says that figure hasn't changed in 25 years. It also has an agreement with the fire department, which is run independently of the town, that transfers $40,000 from the university to the department each year. No matter the cost, Patterson and Tenser say the town and university will continue working together to cut down on out-of-control parties. They say it protects students.
It truly is a liaison and a facilitator when there's a concern. To act as an advocate sometimes for students in situations where, especially with their landlord, about how we need to work, to help them kind of come to resolution with that so that there's not legal action.
Janelyn Patterson says that she's protecting students when she urges the town to issue a fine or to take extra action. Mm-hmm. Do you think that's the case?
I'd say no.